This week's scenario is Extraction from the 2016 Steamroller package. This scenario does consist of the Killbox Artifice and has 2 flags, which can be controlled for 1 CP or dominated for 1 CP, and the enemy objective can be destroyed for 1 CP. Victory conditions consist of 5 control points or caster assassination.
Hello, this is Iron Lich W, and this week I decided to step away from minions and try and get into Cryx Mark III, and I decided to start with Lich Lord Venethrax. Venethrax has had a lot of changes from Mark II to Mark III, especially with his feat, and I just wanted to give him a spin and try and figure out what he's all about. So I dropped 3 heavies, went with a lot of lights, and only a unit of, or 1 unit instead of the multiple like Cryx is typically used to.
I chose Bloody Barnabas because I actually happen to like him. I think he's a good caster. You saw I run 3 units of Gators. Snappers, I ran 2 just to help generate fury. Then you have my Ironback Spitter and Wrastler. And then you have the 2 Witch Doctors, which give support to any of the units of Gators I want them to have.
For deployment of the Cryx army, I started by putting Venethrax in the middle, followed by Erebus right next to him, and then I space out the Seethers. What I really want to do, and one thing that really excites me about Venethrax, is his Field Marshal handing out countercharge. One thing I just have been dreaming about doing is countercharging with Erebus and making things stationary. I think it's hilarious, and hopefully it'll work. Even if I lose Erebus on whatever I countercharge, I just like the idea that I can do that. Granted, I realize there's a lot of things in the game that are not immune to stationary, so we'll see how this plays out.
For my deployment, I set up the Blue Gators to the right, followed by the Ironback Spitter, and behind the Spitter I have a Snapper. Next to the Spitter I have the Wrastler. Now I always put the Wrastler out front. I maybe need to think about resetting him for future games. After that are my Green Gators with a Spitter next to them and behind. They're to help defend Barnabas. Then you have my White Gators to the far left. And behind the Blue Gators and the Green and White Gators is a Witch Doctor to help give support and zombify. Then you have Barnabas, who's behind the Snapper next to one of the Witch Doctors.
Cryx turn 1. I guess seeing how my opponent deployed, my initial thought is to run up and get rid of this terrain, get past the terrain as quickly as possible. Because immediately I look at the board, I look at my list, and I realize I forgot to put Saxon Orc in there for reconnaissance, so I foresee myself having trouble with terrain, with Bloodgorgers at least. So run everything up and try and take care and not mitigate the terrain. Luckily the Scavengers have flight, so those are 2 pieces I could safely keep in a forest without having to worry about moving at half speed. So once I get the Bloodgorgers running, I know I can run them full distance, at least on turn 1, get them past that linear obstacle, and just try and create a quagmire around that 1 flag while focusing all my jacks onto the remaining flag and or my opponent's objective. So everyone runs except for Venethrax, who casts Lamentation and just moves up. Probably won't be, no, won't be using it early on, but it'll work later. Or he charges it and fails.
Turn 1, I ran the Blue Gators up. They had Dirge of Mist, or whatever the new thing is. Ran the Spitter up. Ran the Wrastler up, Burning of Fury. Ran a Snapper up, burned some Fury. Then I moved the Witch Doctor up 5 for the Blue Gators, and then zombified them. Ran the Green Gators up, ran the white gators up. Green gators and white gators both sang Dirge of Mist. I moved the other witch doctor up and zombified the green gators. I moved Barnabas up and cast Warpath on myself.
Cryx turn 2. So, I'll keep Lamentation. And that's basically it. My opponent hasn't run far enough because minions aren't very fast. So, not in charge range of a whole lot I have. So I am going to probably just spend another turn advancing and trying to get past at least the forest that's on the right side. But start with the Bloodgorgers, get them out of the way, get them past that linear obstacle. And essentially what I'm trying to do is bait my opponent. I'll give him a couple Bloodgorgers, have him charge his Posse into his front 2, and then just use the rest of the guys and just create a wall of beef for him to have to get past. Then I position my jacks, trying to get an Arc Node out front. I want the Scavengers kind of in the back because they're not actually frontline guys, especially since I lost defense in the transition to Mark III. Run my Seether up to where he can only get charged by one Posse member, because if I run him up too far, then he would just get obliterated by an entire unit. And since I have minions, I know that my opponent doesn't have a whole lot of magical attacks, so I run up a Machine Wraith to within, near a flag and just contest it and just move around pieces and try and set up for next turn, because I'm expecting my opponent to move at least into the swamp area and give me some good targets to go after. I mean, once Venethrax goes, he throws out a random dead weight. If I happen to kill a Gator, which are a Posse member, which now have 5 boxes, I can shut down another one. But I miss, and I decided just to sit on 2. One thing I've learned is that it's actually pretty important for Warcasters to camp a couple points of focus for the armor. And then the rest of the models either do nothing or move, or run.
Okay, for turn 2, pulled all my upkeeps, my Fury and all that, paid for the upkeep for Warpath, moved Barnabas up, cast Swamp Pit. The Blue Gators prayed offerings to Chaos, moved up to attack the Bloodgorgers. As you see, Erebus moved up and smacked one of my Gators. Then we go through and I do very minimal damage to the Slaughterborn, but it was worth the attack. Had to get him up there. So the Spitter then moves up and shoots at Erebus. I hit, do some damage to him. Erebus, one of the Slaughterborn, and one of my Gators, the one that got wounded originally, were all affected, and I lost the Gator. Move the Wrastler into the pond. Move the Snappers into a better position to protect Barnabas. Activated the Green Gators. Move them up. And then activated the white gators and moved them up. Both of them ended up with Dirge of Mist. And we zombified the green gators on the left.
Cryx turn 3. Alright, so upkeep limitation, and I actually will allocate out some focus this turn. My opponent has given me a choice target by putting the Wrestler in the middle within charging distance of at least 2 jacks, even with them being slowed down by the terrain. So I figure if I can get mortality on the Wrestler, I'll actually be able to knock him down, which is why I start with Venny this turn. He just kind of casts mortality at the Wrestler, actually hits, and then once I hit, I feel a little comfortable doing a slight advance. Now as I ponder what I'm going to do with the Wrestler, run over a Soul Trapper, see if I get a free soul, and then I just go straight into Erebus. I mean, I know what I want. Just send him in there. So I measure distance to him to factor in the being slowed down from the terrain. I still get there. With mortality up on the Wrestler, he's defense 10, and Erebus can hit him. And he does hit him with a charge attack, and makes him stationary, which I just love. I just like this new ability. This is the only reason Erebus is in the list, because he countercharge and make things stationary. But one thing I do notice is that even with mortality, Erebus isn't quite getting the damage that I want on the Wrestler, which makes me very sad. So, I mean, Erebus does a decent amount, but given that I had to pay for the charge, I only got 4 swings with Erebus. So it took out roughly 3/4 of the life that the Wrestler had, which is fine, because I'm looking at the Scavengers I have in the forest, and I know that between the 2 of them, they'll be able to finish off the Wrestler. One thing that I really wanted to do, and was trying to take out both my opponent's heavy beasts this turn. And by acting first Scavenger, he moves in there, because he actually had distance without charging, hits, and because he's got Finisher, got 4 dice, kills the Wrestler, and then actually remember to sprint him. One thing I generally forget to do is sprint those guys back. Or no, he charged, he didn't walk up there. So then I activate the Skarlock, trying to go for that Ironback Spitter, but I couldn't quite get line of sight. I actually have trouble with it, and he ends up missing the spell that he uses, which is okay. And then I activate the Bloodgorgers and just charge in. My opponent did go after my Bloodgorgers like I thought he would, at least with some of his posse, but the important thing is he kind of spread out the posse and gave me a few charge lanes, or more charge lanes with Bloodgorgers than I was expecting. But one thing I realized during this game, during this activation, in fact, is the fact that Bloodgorgers are POW pretty bad. So I think they were dice -7 because the posse had Unyielding. And essentially, if I didn't do any damage with the charge attack, the second attack rarely did something unless I got, like, Dice Spike. But the Bloodgorgers, they performed admirably. They got rid of 2 posse members. And then I remembered to overtake. And then I got to the second objective I wanted to do, which was to get the Seether in on the Ironback Spitter. Seether goes in, charges for free, so he was getting 5 swings. And because of the amazingness of Cryx, fails to kill the Ironback Spitter. So this turn we had 2 Cryx heavies on 2 minions heavies and failed to kill on both accounts. Although I must admit I did like the fact that the Seether did get a boost in his POW. Luckily, my opponent, who had his Animus up, didn't kill any of my systems, which would have been very sad. So once again, my heavy takes out 3/4 of my opponents of the opposing war beast. But that's okay, because like I did in the last one, I brought in the Scavenger to finish the job. So Scavenger once again does what my heavies could not, which was kill a heavy. And then once again, they sprint back to safety. And then I spend the rest of my turn just advancing the other pieces of the army that I needed to. And I'm realizing that Ragman, his purpose wasn't, he wasn't supposed to be Ragman, that was supposed to be Saxon Orc. But they figure out the complexities of list building as you go. And then I activate the last Seether I have, and I just throw him into the Posse group, because I know he'll be able to sit there and survive at least a few swings. So he goes in there, he kills 2 Posse, and he's just going to sit there and let the rest of the Posse members chew on him. And I'll put my Machine Wraith in front of him to try and limit the number of Posse that will actually be able to get both attacks on the Seether.
Okay, as you can see at the end of Cryx's turn 3, I had lost my Snapper and my Wrastler. The poor Wrastler didn't even get to do any damage this game. I'm going to have to figure out how to play him better. Well, in this round, things got interesting. You see I activate the Blue Gators, move them around to take on a Bloodgorger and Erebus. They do pretty good. We lose 1 Bloodgorger, the other guy doesn't hit, and I'm able to do a little damage to Erebus. The Blue Gators also had offerings to Kiosk. The Snapper takes out Erebus. I then activate the Witch Doctor, give Zombify to the last 2 Gators in the blue unit. Activate Barnabas, pop my feet, knocking everybody down. I should have done that first. Maybe the leader could have taken out Erebus and I could have done something else with him. As you can see, Warpath is up and I keep forgetting to activate it. Gonna have to try to remember that. Then Barnabas takes on the other Seether. Barnabas then swings on the Seether, using everything he can, but he still doesn't take him out, even though he's knocked down. Bring the Bull Snapper up and swing on him, doesn't do anything. Then the Gators activate and move over to take on one of the Seethers, and I can't see the model to tell you what it is. Now the White Gators are activating. I move them in to try to take on the Seether and hopefully the other Seether.
Cryx turn 4. Rage. That's the only way to describe this. I had the setup I wanted. Barnabas came up and I knew he was going to pop feet. Erebus countercharges because of the Field Marshal from Venethrax and misses. It's like a once in a I don't want to say lifetime, but once in a great while shot, because that's not going to happen too often. Needing a 6, I rolled a majestic 5. But, nonetheless, I have other options. So, I upkeep Lamentation. I allocate out Max to Erebus, who, amazingly, still has a Cortex, and 1 good fist. And he doesn't need to stand up, because I am right there. So I start by activating Ragman, have him march up as far as he can, and he does Death Field, with the key person being Erebus. Erebus stands up, sacrificing movement, and goes to town on Barnabas. I do hit Barnabas, which makes him stationary. Would have been better to do it on the counter charge, but on your next turn, it's just as good. Then with Death Field, I'm actually hitting a little harder now, but I'm not rolling so hot. So I force my opponent to burn through both his transfers, and I leave him on 6 life. So I'm trying to figure out how to get more guys to him, but since everything's knocked down, I'm forced to accept the fact that I need a gun in this army somewhere. I have no alternatives, so I just begin with the rest of the army activations. The Bloodgorgers who were not in range, our Bloodgorgers who were in range of Barnabas's feet, they get up and they walk in, while the remainers, no, they press forward. So the rest of them run or charge if they can. And Bloodgorgers, they do some work still. I get lucky on one guy that was outside of Barnabas' feet, charges the Witch Doctor and hits him and kills him. Which works for me. I don't like the guy anyway. But then that's about all they're able to do. Then once the Bloodgorgers are done, go ahead and run Slaughterborn. I figure I initially was going to try and win on strength of the Jacks, but the Jacks are starting to wear down. I've lost one. Another one's barely hanging on. So I'm going to run Slaughterborn and try and get the Bloodgorgers into a position to be very threatening. Then major brain fart moment here as I handed out all this focus and I forgot to shake. And I was wishing real bad that I had Morton Avra. So I'm like, alright, yeah, these guys can go in, they're going to totally tear into Barnabas and sit there and juggle 3 focus. So it's just learning the Mark III system and remembering the proper order. So once I realized I didn't shake from anything, I go ahead and this is a feat turn for Venethrax, so I'm going to stop my opponent from getting any more fury. And then limit the number of attacks his beast can do, because they will rile and they will get angry. At least that's my plan. Then I see there on the far side who's just, having fun with the posse, playing cards, doing something. He kills a couple more and sits there.
Okay, for turn 4, you can pretty well see Barnabas is really weakened. He's down to 2 life. I activate a Bull Snapper and we take out a Seether. Barnabas has paid his upkeep, and I go to try to move him for a type of charge, but I am blocked. As you can see, that kind of leaves me very vulnerable, and I actually move him up because I do not have enough army left to hold off the Bloodgorgers off of Barnabas. And then the green gators activate. We take out a soul catcher, do some damage to the other Seether. The white gators activate, take out some more damage points on the Seether, but we don't kill it off. So I move the blue gator, actually rotate the gator leader so his tail can take out one Bloodgorger and try to swing with his halberd stick onto the other Bloodgorger. I am able to take out both Bloodgorgers, and that leaves an open path for the Bloodgorger behind him to make a good charge on Barnabas. But it is what I had to do.
Cryx turn 5. So I feel I put my opponent in a bad spot with my feat, which was what my feat was supposed to do. So immediately get down to business. I'll keep Lamentation, as well as allocate 2 focus out to a Scavenger. The one remaining heavy I have is basically useless because I think he's lost a lot of systems and he's surrounded, so he's not going to be able to do much. So I just go for broke. I activate Skarlock. He casts Mortality on Barnabas and hits because he's done nothing but miss all game. And I am thoroughly amazed. But anyhow, once Skarlock's done, I activate the Scavenger. Scavenger charges in, and because Barnabas has already taken damage, Scavenger gets his fourth dice, or 3 dice, because I didn't charge. He's effectively Weapon Master, and takes care of Barnabas after the one transfer he had. So I enjoyed playing the game and getting back into Cryx. And while I know that I'm not superb at it, I'm still going to try and figure out how to improve gameplay.
Okay folks, I enjoyed the game. Just to let you know, I have made some mistakes. This is my very first Mark III game, so I don't have all the nuances down with it. Be patient, give me suggestions. I do understand I've got to not rely on my Gator Posse anymore. They're just not a good beat stick like they used to be. I have in the works to bring in some pigs and, you know, like Pharaoh bone grinders and stuff, and Targ. So hopefully in the next couple of months, my games will get a little bit better and the armies will look a little bit better for you. Again, call me out, make any suggestions. Love to hear from y'all. Hope you enjoyed the game.